If you're a Pittsburgh baseball fan, then this is the podcast for you. Make your way down, grab a beverage, and get ready to talk Pirates with myself, Craig Toth, and Scott Jackson, two of the biggest fans you'll ever meet. This is Bucks in the Basement.
Now I see the changes in this town. They change, they say one thing, but then the next day it's different. They change, but they don't know what they want. All they do is change. Going left, going right, travel day, travel night. That's where we'll go. No excuses, no goodbyes, no one cries, no one lies. We'll never know.
Just a bit outside. Tried the corner and missed. We lost a legend of the game today, and it's something that Scott and myself, felt the need to address because even though Bob Uecker did not belong to the Pittsburgh Pirates, didn't really belong to us. He belonged to Milwaukee. For people of our generation, he kind of was like the baseball announcer. And obviously it comes because of, being in the movie Major League. And I put out there as soon as I heard the news that, I do quote that movie and his character in regular conversations at times. My daughter hates it because anytime I tell a dad joke and it kind of bombs, I give that line right there, just a bit outside, try the corner and missed. Scott, definitely a very sad thing for the game of baseball. Rest in peace to Bob Uecker, thoughts and prayers with his family. But these ones like hit a little bit different, especially when he was such a big part of, we're baseball fans, so we probably watch Major League, I'm guessing 100 times a piece.
Yeah, and one of the funniest guys to live in our century, in the past century, I would say, in the television era. All the times he was on Johnny Carson, to go back and watch those YouTube videos, just how hilarious he was, his one-liners. One of my favorite lines talking about was signing his first major league contract. Signing bonus of a couple $100,000. My dad didn't have that kind of money, but he pulled it together. Yeah, just the self-deprecating humor and watching a great package that MLB Network did for him. Seeing the late Hank Aaron talk about what a clubhouse guy he was and how he brought everything together. I think Tim McCarver talking about the importance that he had for the Cardinals when they won their World Series, and a lot of people don't think about Bob Uecker being a World Series champion. But but for all those things, Mr. Belvedere, Major League, his stuff he did with the WWF back for a couple of WrestleManias, that great video with Andre the Giant, how about you get your foot off my shoulder, but also one of the best play-by-play guys to listen to, could carry entire games by himself, which typically I'm not a huge fan of listening to a guy just call a game by himself. I like that conversational style like the Pirates broadcasters do, but Bob Uecker, I could sit and just listen to him straight up call a game. And when you can see that, Joe Block has been influenced a lot by Bob Uecker and their time together in Milwaukee. So, yeah, we lost a great one today.
Yeah, and the other part is watching his Hall of Fame speech. I did that today afterwards. And, like everybody said, he did not have a single piece of paper. He had nothing written down and gave one of the most memorable speeches in the Hall of Fame's history. I know that Jimmy Leland did a pretty good job this last time he was there. But yeah, just the way that he could tell stories to keep you involved, to keep you engaged, and also to talk about the game and, to make the game come to life. It's definitely, it's a very sad day. And like I said, he didn't really belong to us, but I feel like the people of our generation, like he was like the baseball announcer, for us. And like I said, it's just a very sad thing, and did not want to do an episode here without mentioning that kind of stuff. And And the other part is the Pirates haven't really given us much to talk about anyway, but I guess we can get into some Pirate stuff. Uh, there are, some. I kind of gave this like a general housekeeping of the Pittsburgh Pirates, like the title of this episode here, which is just basically kind of tying up some loose ends. Last week we talked a decent amount about the arbitration. We knew that Santana and Oviedo and the Pirates were unable to come to an agreement. We did not have the numbers at that point in time. We do have those now. The one that sticks out the most to everybody is probably Oviedo, offered $850,000 by the Pirates. His camp comes in at 1.15. People's automatic reaction is, well, why don't they just split the difference? Well, that's not how this arbitration is set up. They don't know what the numbers are. Obviously, there's guys I saw out there that were like 10,000 or 15,000 off, and they could possibly go to arbitration over that. And that's not something you ever want to see happen. But for Oviedo, tough, having Tommy John surgery last offseason, missing this entire season. But I did see something out there. I don't know if you saw this, Scott, which Ethan Holohan had put out there, that he was looking for kind of examples of players like this. Because normally, we've had JT Brubaker before who, missed an entire season, and they just kind of agreed to the same thing they had agreed to the previous season. But since he was, kind of coming into his first year or arbitration, was on a league minimum contract, this isn't something that happens very often. He came up with an example, and it was Chad Kuhl. And Chad Kuhl, I think he was making somewhere around 650, 680,000, and they offered him right around the same. Obviously, it's a little bit of a difference because it's not as much of a raise because the minimum now is a little bit higher. But there is at least that precedence for, unfortunately, a guy missing a year when he's trying to get his numbers up to kind of hit his first payday, and it doesn't really happen.
Yeah, I see both sides of it. Why should we pay you more money because you didn't do anything to better establish yourself last year to raise your own stock? But on the other side of it, the workload that he carried the last season that he played probably had a lot to do with the injury happening, and so they, I'm sure, feel like the team owes him for those lost wages and that lost opportunity. I just hope that they can come to an agreement that no hard feelings, continue to work together well. Baseball can be a dirty business sometimes when you get behind the scenes. Let's just hope that they can come to an agreement and move forward.
Yeah, and that's with Ben Charrington. The biggest thing is he's a guy that really shows no emotion, and it seems like that baseball is a business. So even when he makes these kind of missteps that are perceived by people, especially with the stuff with Rowdy Tellez at the end of the year, the stuff with IKF where they gave him the opportunity, to come in, and he's like, well, no, I'm good. I don't need those at bats, and I really wasn't ready to go anyway. So yeah, just let some of the younger guys play. But it doesn't seem like that they are taking any type of emotion into that. So I don't really think this is a hit against Oviedo. I still see them as thinking he will be a part of the team. They obviously have him under control for, a few more years here. I don't know exactly what he's going to do this year. And I think that maybe even that's just kind of a piece of it that, I think Ben Charrington throws and his crew throw the, what his stats were, didn't pitch last year, may just be in a relief role this year and just throws it into a salary generator. And it's okay, well, this is kind of what a normal guy in this circumstance would get. Obviously, hopefully Oviedo doesn't come out of this with, a little bit of a sour taste in his mouth. They can figure something out. I mean, but eventually, I mean, he's going to have to come out on the mound, prove himself, and get that number to go up over the next couple of years.
It's a little easier to treat it like a business when you've got a 40-man roster and you're talking to all those players and all the guys that are in the organization. But on the other side, when you're the player and it's just about you, it's a little easier to take things personally.
Yeah, and with Dennis Santana, offer him 1.4. He comes in at 2.1, a little bit further apart. And I don't know if Dennis Santana is just kind of maybe looking for a little bit of a payday here. I mean, you really can't blame him. Came in, was, the Pirates' most consistent reliever after the first few hiccups that he had in his outings, and put up a pretty good season. I mean, looking at it, I think it was like 1.3 WAR, what it ended up being for the Pirates. Obviously, had struggled with the Yankees prior to that. Hasn't had really a very stellar career. So, I mean, that's kind of going against him because they don't just look at the past year for this. I mean, it's kind of set up that, a player comes up and he plays for 3 years and he goes to arbitration. So they look over, the past 3 years. With some guys, it doesn't really get set up that way because they're, bouncing up and down, and they may actually be in their 4th or 5th year in the majors, but haven't accrued enough time, and they finally got themselves to arbitration. I think this one, I mean, it's kind of cut and dry for me. I think that an arbiter looks at this, if it makes it to that point, and just basically says, I mean, I think that we'll side on the Pirates' end of that. But, I mean, can't blame old Dennis for trying to get a little bit of money out of the success that he did have last year.
Yeah, I mean, he was a bright part of that bullpen, and I'm sure he and his representatives are looking and saying, "Well, they paid Aroldis Chapman how much for the season that he had?" And then the Pirates are looking like, "Well, you don't need that much money. What are you trying to do? Buy opening day tickets?"
Yeah, man. Yeah, I don't usually post stuff like I try to stay fairly calm about different things, but I mean, and I got some DMs from people because people were saying, because I put in there in a quote unquote insider, it's not because I have a podcast. It's not because, I know some people within the Pirates organization. No, anybody can be a Pirates insider. You just have to sign up and get 75 billion emails in your inbox every day. Anytime there's a sale on clothes, anytime there's any type of event, you will get an email about that. And then, I mean, supposed to be, I guess it would be the perks. I mean, the season ticket holders get the ultimate perks, but you would think that the perks of being an insider and putting up with all of that junk mail would be to be able to, go in there and purchase opening day tickets kind of wherever I would want to sit. That should kind of be almost like a fan's choice. And I know obviously you still could, because you can go on all of the secondary sites and buy them for marked up prices. For people that, go to games with me, I sit in 2 spots usually. I usually sit in the left field bleachers because I was one of the original left field loonies with my buddies. I can't remember the guy's name that still runs it. I do see him at games from time to time. Or I sit in those nice center field seats there. Last year, the bleacher seats, actually it was 2 years ago, the bleacher seats were usually it was a little bit marked up because I can get them for $24 during the season. They were $35.
Yeah.
So that was $70. Last year, I think that we ended up spending $100 between the tickets. So those ones were marked up a little bit more and ended up being, $50 a piece. If I wanted to sit there, I just looked, they are $127 a piece on the secondary sites. Weren't even available when tickets went on sale for the Pirates. So, I mean, I was talking to you about this beforehand, and I kind of even just put it out there. I said, I think this might be, the first opening day that I miss in 24 years. Because I was at 2001, and other than 2020, where there, were no fans, I mean, it's just kind of been something that I've done. And I know that people will be out there will like, don't give your money to Bob Nutting or whatever. But for me, it was like it was an event. It
Yeah.
was,
Celebration of
a
baseball.
celebration, yeah, of the game that I love. But yeah, man, this whole secondary site thing, because my buddy had texted me, like a couple who I go to the game with, had texted me and said, well, we better get our tickets. And I'm like, dude, well, they're not on sale yet. He goes, well, they're already on the secondary site. So that's something that I've been thinking about is just like, I want to know who I can talk to that
Right.
basically all of these tickets were already out there on the secondary market. The options were for me to sit in peanut heaven for $60, which miraculously, by the time I was going to spend that, man, I was going to spend it. We were going to do it. And sat down with the wife like after dinner and went to go purchase the tickets. And they'd already been bumped up to $84. And that's where they still sit today. So they went up $24. So yeah, I mean, to me, like I understand it's the Yankees. I understand they put in that flex pricing, whatever it be. 2 years ago it was the White Sox. Last year it was the Orioles. The Yankees are a huge draw, but to me it's just kind of ridiculous that for opening day that I would have to pay an upcharge of like 4 to 5 times as much as I would pay during the regular season to possibly go out there and sit in the snow again. And yeah, we've already decided unless they go down to what they were last year, which would be like $50 a piece, we're just going to go up to the local pub, grab a couple beers, get a couple appetizers, sit there and watch the game with the kids because they usually don't come with us to opening day, and you know, save a couple $100.
As cold and snowy and kind of miserable as it was last year, it was cool seeing Jim Leland, seeing Jared Jones pitch. But I'm not going to pay the Yankee tax. I'm not going to pay these absorbent rates for the opening day seats, even though you got to know the pecking order, right? Like you said, season ticket holder, then like Giant Eagle Advantage card member, PNC debit card, all these different things that are great deals throughout the season. But even with any kind of deals that you might get, it's just not worth it for me. And for me, living farther away, it's a almost 2 hour drive for me to go, and it's a day. But as a celebration of baseball, it just really put a damper on it last year, being snowy and cold, and I'm just not built for it. I'm dealing with enough snow up here now. I don't want to extend that into April and have to deal with it while I'm trying to watch baseball. But yeah, I'll sit home. I'll kick my feet up and maybe grab a sub or something and just really enjoy the game on TV. Hopefully, I haven't heard anything. I don't know. Maybe you've heard something. Hopefully, they can get the Sportsnet Pittsburgh app to work on TVs, Roku TVs in particular, in my case, and so that I can actually sit in a chair and not have to watch it on my phone.
That would be good for you, man. Couldn't imagine doing that. I mean, that's the one thing when like I can't completely cut the cord just yet. I would love to, but yeah, I gotta have my sports on the TV. But I mean, it is just definitely frustrating that this is what I'm talking about on a Pirates podcast right now. But it is frustrating to me, and my wife just basically, I mean, she's a White Sox fan, but she's like, what are the Pirates trying to do? What's Bob Nutting trying to do? Make all his money in like one game in like one series? Because I mean, she enjoys going down there too. Like I said, it was cool a couple years ago because she's a White Sox fan to go see the White Sox at the Pirates home opener. But I did want to bring up something about the White Sox. I'm not just mentioning them because of that, because it was something we had talked about after we kind of signed off last week. When I was telling you about, Pirates Fest coming up, and obviously, me, my 3 kids, my buddy, his 2 kids, we're going down to Pirates Fest just like we did last year. I mean, the kids had an absolutely great time. I do have to put that video out there at some point in time because I've talked about it. I think at least a few times on this show of Bob Walk chasing my youngest around the bases because he hit the ball, and in practice I always say that I'll tell him when to run, and he goes, "You didn't tell me when to run," and so like he hit the ball, and like so then Bob Walk ends up kind of chasing him around there. But the one thing that is kind kind of be positive out of this, because after me complaining about how much opening day tickets would be, is that we don't have to pay for Pirates Fest. Because I told you to look at this, and it is an absolute, like, it's ridiculous that the White Sox, who had the worst baseball team in history last year, who does not have like a ton of star power left on the team, does not even have a lot of the guys that would even be considered to be quote unquote star power at their Sox Fest. A single day general admission ticket to get into Sox Fest is $56. The MVP experience was like $250. And then you have like the kids or whatever can get in for like $35 or whatever. Now I know that you would have to spend some money to get like the perks of what you would want to do at Pirates Fest. I mean, obviously if you could, because like I told you before, the autograph session sold out in about 10 seconds again, and I didn't get in again. And that's all for my kids. Honestly, believe me, people, that is not for me. I'm past the age of seeking autographs. The only autograph I think I have right now is Mitch Keller, who signed the Keller beer that was made at Allegheny City Brewing before, not this past season, but the season before. And I just thought that it would be really cool for Mitch Keller to sign a can of beer. So, I mean, yeah, I did that. But yeah, this is all for the kids. So, I mean, they do have the free tickets. The kids will, stand in line for that, get some autographs from some players. Last year they had Jared Triolo, Nick Gonzalez, Lika Williams, I think like Kyle Nicholas. So they had some of like the younger players in there, for those free sessions. They'll get to do all the activities and stuff. But man, am I glad that from the get-go I don't have to drop like $56 times 4 to just walk in the door.
How bad is that for the White Sox ownership? Because you just put the fans through hell last season, being one of the worst teams in the history of the sport, and the fans that have stuck with you through all of that care enough to show up in winter to go meet the team, surround themselves with White Sox baseball, and then you're going to soak them like that. Yeah, it's not even Bob Nutting does that.
No, my brother-in-law told me when I asked him about this earlier today, he said, no, you always have to pay for it. It's always been a ticket. And for me, like, that's where, like, okay, this is like kind of like, at least I feel like Pirates Fest in some ways, obviously fans aren't going to be as excited as they would be as if the Pirates made a big signing. If they finished, last year with over, 80 wins, it's not going to be in that realm. But this is kind of like almost like a little bit of an olive branch every year. People obviously are going to get their clicks and different stuff by, pulling a Heath Hembry baseball that they pay for when, you can give like a grab bag item or whatever it may be. I always buy at least one of those for each of the kids. But yeah, I mean, to me, it's like, okay, well, if I don't want to spend anything, I can go down there, I can get swag, I can, meet and greet with the players. My kids can get autographs, and they can, participate in interactive activities. They have batting cages, all kinds of different stuff. And then also, if you just want to go down, and sit there and, listen to the Q&A with like, Ben Charrington and Travis Williams and, whoever else is up on stage. They also have other activities and different stuff up there, and not spend a dime. I feel like as a baseball fan, as a Pirates fan, it's a pretty cool thing that they do.
I've been to Pirate Fest twice. 2001, when my dad took me down when I was real young, and then I don't remember the year. But to speak to your point here, where you don't have to pay anything to get in, my buddy and I, we drove down, we walked in, and the first thing that happened was, as we got to the floor, Neil Huntington was standing there by himself in the middle of the floor, and I just went over and started talking to him. And so that didn't cost a penny. And it was, I asked him some questions about, because that was when they introduced draft slotting and having caps on how much you could spend on the draft. And so I asked him a little bit about that. and he was very gracious with his time, answered my questions, talked about that a little bit. And so, yeah, I didn't have to spend anything for that experience. And now that I have kids, if my kids were more interested in baseball, that would be such a magical thing for them to just go in the middle of the winter months and celebrate baseball, get excited about spring, get excited about the next chapter of Pirates baseball. It's a great service that they do. And yeah, there's going to be people who are trying to get the anger clicks, the hate clicks, but really, it is a nice thing that they do. And they're trying to make a few bucks on the extra stuff. That's great, but you don't have to. Like you said, if you just want to go down and walk around and just feel the atmosphere, then that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, and it's almost like people have never heard of gambling before. That's pretty much what that thing is like you can give your 20 bucks for a baseball, you can give your whatever money for a jersey, and you can either get, like I said, a Heath Hembree signed baseball,
Hmm.
or you could get a Brian Reynolds or an Andrew McCutcheon, different things like that. I mean, different jerseys. I mean, I saw somebody walking around there with like a David Bednar signed jersey, and for fans, that would be a pretty cool thing. But then also you could give that money and, get a God, I can't even think of, maybe Miguel Andujar or something, even though he's had some
Drew,
good time out in Oakland.
Drew Maggi.
Yeah, Drew Maggi jersey or something or whatever it may be, a Harleen Garcia signed baseball. I don't know, but you could get that kind of stuff.
Can
But
you
to
pick
me,
up the
it's
ball to sign it? I don't know.
I don't. Maybe they had to have somebody hand him the ball and he had to sign with his like
Robot.
non-dominant hand or something, so it doesn't even like look like his signature. I'm not really sure exactly how that goes,
It's
but
just an X.
it's just an X. But I mean, it's your cash. Do with it what you will. The Pirates with their cash, Scott. That segue right there was terrible, but also amazing. With their cash considerations, which is not even actual really cash, went out and got another relief pitcher. And I knew who he was, but that's only because I used to write about the Rule 5 draft and players that the Pirates may select and different things like that because Brett DeGus was a pretty big name in the Rule 5 draft back in 2020, was a top 30 Dodgers prospect, got selected, ended up bouncing around from a bunch of teams over the years. I think I saw him pitching some independent ball in there a little bit as well. Pitched for 3 teams last year. Obviously, at some point in time, he did have some pedigree to his name. Some of that shine has gone off of that, but you're getting a 27-year-old reliever who can nearly touch 100, and you are giving up absolutely nothing for him. It's one of those moves that happens. We already got Strzelecki on a similar type of move with the Guardians that happens throughout the baseball season in a vacuum. And I think that I need to, if I would ever make shirts for this show, it would be like Bucks in the Basement. In a Vacuum is a very good Pirates podcast. The Pirates in a vacuum, every single move that Ben Cherington makes is, a very it's like a sensible move. It's a
Mhm.
no risk move. And if this guy on the cheap turns out to be, the Dennis Santana of this year, then it was well worth the move. It was well worth the roster spot. But if he doesn't, you DFA him and you gave it a shot. That's pretty much what this is.
Yeah, with the bullpen the way it was last year, and obviously being a weak spot of the team this offseason, it seems to me like they're stockpiling options to take to training camp just to see who you take it down to spring training, see who works, who doesn't. They didn't give anybody up. It's not like they even the lowest end prospect was not given up for this guy. So yeah, just give him a shot. It's not a big deal to me, but I think that based on the offseason that the Pirates are having, where nothing has happened month after month, that all of these are under the microscope. And oh, it's not Randall Grichuk, it's not Pete Alonso. Then I don't want to hear about it. And it seems like the Pirates being the same old, same old.
DJ Stewart doesn't move the needle for you at all.
not a little bit. But
Yeah,
I do understand the importance of having organizational guys, having non-roster invitees, just not high hopes.
no, and that's where, like, I mean, obviously, like, that's another thing that, in this lull of, lack of Pirates moves, the only news that really comes out is like a DJ Stewart signing. We're getting Brent DeGus for cash considerations, and here are our non-roster invitees, which is pretty much everybody that has signed a minor league deal at this point in time with that invitation to spring training. Some of these guys that may have a little bit more service time in the majors. I mean, we've seen this happen each year, and every team does this. Is that they have a certain amount of days that they can be with the team in spring training up to a certain point. Some of these guys, it extends into the regular season. If they make the major league team, then, they get a little bit of a bump because, they've put in their time in the majors previously and are working their way back. If not, you get your shot at the majors and you might be able to stick on a team, whatever it may be. But yeah, I mean, these are the types of moves that every team is making. But when your team is not really making any moves, they're the ones that stick out. The Caleb Ferguson signing, like we were talking about beforehand, if this signing comes after, say Randall Grichuk or Alex Verdugo or somebody signs, even though, I'm not saying that Pirates fans would be overly excited and elated with those types of moves, but the Caleb Ferguson one would not get really any ire from the fans, as in, them trying to say that, Caleb Ferguson is not some sort of that he hasn't been like a major league arm for, the past 5-6 years. It's realistically, that's where, and I understand the Pirates fans' frustrations. I'm frustrated as well. I mean, we talk back and forth, and it's like, okay, what are we going to talk about today? It would be nice to have a move to talk about, and it would sure be nice to have a move that, kind of made this team better. But I mean, kind of right now, it's just the wallowing in the, here's your non-roster invitees, here's an arm, and, we'll see what happens, after
Yeah.
Pirates Fest.
For the non-roster invitees, the guys that they signed to minor league deals and invite, that doesn't mean a whole lot to me. But I am excited to see like Abraham Gutierrez, Malcolm Nunez, some of those guys that we've had our eyes on for Eddie Yean, have our eyes on for a few years, see them get that next level of competition in spring training and see what they can do, in games. Because I always sign up for MLB.TV so that I can get all the spring training games from all the teams, so I don't have to miss a Pirates game if maybe they're on the road or something like that. And you can really dive into it. And that's by watching those games. That's like a few years ago when O'Neal Cruz got left off the roster to start the season. I don't know if you watched, I'm sure you watched a bunch of those games. You could tell that he wasn't quite ready for the show, with seeing that how he was performing. He just happened to have his best performances when they were on, Root Sports Pittsburgh or whatever. But I guess it was AT&T Sports Now at that time. But yeah, so you watch those games, you get to see all these guys. I'm just really excited to see some of these prospects play baseball. Maybe that's something that's getting lost in the long off season, and the inaction is. I'm excited to watch baseball, and I can't wait for that.
I mean, maybe it was KBL. I'm not really sure. Could have been one of those ones. Yeah. But no, I mean, you bring up Eddie Yean, and this is a guy that, has been working his way up through the Pirates system. I mean, obviously people know he was part of the Josh Bell trade, but did show some like signs of life over this past year. I went to the Arizona Fall League and, really want to see kind of what he can do, because he's one of those guys that was like a lottery ticket. I mean, you didn't know what you had with him. Chances are those guys kind of flame out and don't even ever really get to this point. But he's a guy that's kind of stuck with it. And people are just like, oh, Eddie Yean, I remember hearing that name. It's the same thing as like when people like don't even bring up like where we got Kyle Nicholas from. Like that's the things that kind of like make me laugh at times, is like these trades that, people thought were for naught and they're all forgotten. obvious it doesn't, it's been a while since that trade happened. It doesn't make up for, what's kind of happened in between. But when you make a trade like that and the guy who was the lottery ticket guy within that trade could possibly, become something, then you really kind of have to start to take notice. And I mean, that's just something that's been in my head, over the past day or so, just because of all of, the international signings that happened. Guys like this that are, pretty much picked when they're honestly picked when they're like 12, 13, and 14 years old. They are taken to academies, by whoever it may be, and they are given handshake agreements that aren't really allowed by teams. And then when they turn 16, they get signed. Like 16. Like we're talking about like a sophomore, depending on your birth date, maybe a junior in high school at most. And you're getting signed to these types of things. And yeah, good for, the guys that got the money that they got yesterday, because I did see some pretty big bonuses. I mean, aside from the ones that the Pirates handed out, I mean, not like the record breaking bonuses, because there's a little bit more of some stipulations on what each team can spend and different things like that. But I mean, getting some pretty big bonuses. I mean, keeping it in the family. Johan De Los Santos, brother of Yeri De Los Santos, getting like $2.25 million to come and play for the Pirates, which is not going to be something that people are going to see for a long period of time unless they start, maybe start broadcasting Dominican Summer League games. I would watch that.
Yeah, I would too.
Yeah. It'd be kind of cool to get some eyes on some of these guys that they had signed. And for the Pirates, and it kind of seems to be like a Ben Cherington thing. Neil Huntington used to be what I called a spray and pay kind of guy, which is just basically give out a bunch of $10,000 bonuses, guys that don't even count against the bonus if it's less than $10,000, and just, bring in like, 70 guys. Well, the Pirates, I mean, from what I saw, and to give him credit again, Ethan Holohan put out there that, I think that because of the Pirates, kind of having a prospect fall into their laps with the thing that's going on with Roki Sasaki, with Darrell Morel, giving him like $1.78 million. And I think the Pirates, of their actual like bonuses that count, like have spent all of their money. Yes, people, the Pirates have spent all of their money, because they always spend all of their money in this types of things. Almost $7 million, but gave out a lot of like pretty high end bonuses here.
Yeah, ESPN, I think it was, had an article today about some of the bonuses that these international signees have been getting, and the Pirates were all over that article. Guys that they signed from, of course, the Dominican, Venezuela. They signed a player from Cuba, Australia, Uganda. It's amazing that where they were pulling guys from and spending that money. Yeah, just like the draft. We always talk about the draft and how they typically spend every dollar that they can. It's one of these ways of getting talent that can be high-end talent for a more cost-controlled number. But it really could pay off if you have confidence in your scouting, your development, and the systems that are in place.
Yeah, and one thing I just kind of wanted to bring up with this is that, I mean, everybody knows that the Pirates got rid of, Junior Vizcaino and, brought in Max Kwan. And to me, like, I would probably say 99% of these guys are guys that were kind of like brought in by Junior Vizcaino. So, I mean, people are going to be looking to kind of judge Max Kwan on his first signing. Like, no, Max Kwan was just hired like just a little bit ago, like
these things
a couple
don't
months
develop
ago.
overnight. Yeah.
Yeah. If I would put any of these, into the Max Kwan bucket, if we're going to be judging him, 7 years from now when I mean, hopefully the Pirates, we won't be talking so much about the international signing periods. When the team is doing well, these things kind of like fly under the radar and people don't really pay attention to them as much. But yeah, if he had his fingers on any of these, obviously I would think that the Morel signing, just because they had to, think quick on their feet and kind of jump on that. So he would be spearheading that. And for anybody that, I wouldn't say follows Max Quan's career, but is knowledgeable about his career, is he's big on the Pacific Rim, signing a pitcher for $400,000 out of Australia. I mean, I would think that maybe his fingerprints would be on that one, and also signing a 16-year-old shortstop out of South Korea. And that's stuff that, honestly, Max Quan was only gone for a year. Some of those relationships are things that he could have even set up, especially with those types of players, because he was a scout in that area. Could have set this kind of stuff up and got the ball rolling, leading up to this. So for me, I mean, I kind of put him onto those. We don't know what's going to happen with these guys. Obviously, I did a minor league news and brews back in October, some point in time. They just basically laid out, the guy. Once I thought that Junior Vizcaino was starting to put his stamp on, those international signing periods, that most of the players that are under that are probably at this point in time right around 20 to 21 years old and are sitting at the most maybe in, high A Greensboro at this point in time, working their way up to Altoona. So, I mean, that's the crazy part about this, is there could be somebody that was in Bradenton last year, and I could use De Los Santos as an example, that breaks out and ends up making it up here like Gregory Polanco did or Starling Marte did, and really having an impact on the team. And I guarantee you Junior Vizcaino is getting credit for that. But, I mean, those were guys that were picked by him.
Yeah, these things take a while to develop, because you said the relationships, the scouting that has to happen from a very early age. And, yeah, he didn't even get an opportunity to have the fruits of his labor really prove themselves before they made a move. But Ben wanted to put his own handprint on things, and I think that's a lot of what that was. Have his guy in place and get everybody on the same page. But yeah, you'll be able to judge Junior on these kind of things. But did he where did he land? I'm sure he's still working in baseball. Do you know offhand?
I'm not offhand. I didn't see where he ended up going. I'm assuming he's still working as a scout someplace. He was a guy that was, very respected within the industry, but I definitely did not see where he landed. But one thing I would want to say, just to kind of cap off a rousing international, draft discussion, is no matter what anybody says, Rodolfo Castro was he was a victory within this. Everybody says how bad the Pirates development is, how everything is. He was a guy who actually made it to the major leagues. He's a guy who for half a season had an impact on this team and went into the next offseason and into spring training with a stranglehold on the second base job. Obviously, it didn't work out. But when you look at the number of guys that were selected yesterday, and paid, I shouldn't say selected, but the guys that were signed and paid, and how many of them will not even make it to the States, to make it to the complex leagues and stuff, and to have a guy, because everybody will say, we've got Luis Ortiz, and that's really it. To me, Rodolfo, I still put him in that bucket just because he made it here. And honestly, he's still, I think at this point in time, is only 25 years old. So, I mean, I'm not closing the book on Rodolfo, wherever he may be in the minor leagues right now. But yeah, that's one thing that kind of, stuck at me when I was hearing people talk about this, is they kind of poo-pooed Rodolfo. And I'm like, no, you don't know how difficult this is for these kids. And you use your, Juan Soto's and Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s as the examples. Well, they're like a drop in the bucket of the kids that were actually signed. I mean, so for a guy to make it to the major leagues, no, that's I'd put a feather in the Pirates cap for that one.
They change, they say